started. So you made it to the presentation for Accreditation 101 is what we call it. So this flex it was really an opportunity for us to kind of get started on talking about and thinking about accreditation on just a broader college-wide basis. A lot of times accreditation is accompanied with a lot of language terminology that is not our everyday language, and so I wanted to break that down a little bit, and so that we're understanding the different things that are being referred to. We are starting out our review process, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about the process, what's coming up this semester, and what to expect in the coming months. And I also wanted us to just kind of look at some standards and talk about them and have a little bit of discussion. For me, I've participated in accreditation activities for a few years now since the last review cycle. And the thing that I appreciate about being involved in it is I feel like I'm taking the time to invest in the long term of the college. I think we have a really unique opportunity to be part of something that has come before us and will last a long time after us. And part of making sure that CRC lasts a long time and is a healthy institution is the work that we do by reviewing ourselves and by changing and improving and noticing anything that we need to fix or that we're kind of lacking in, but also building on our strengths. And I think that this process has the ability to do that. I popped in the goal of accreditation, but I think one of the things that I've appreciated over the last couple of years is the folks that I've encountered or been involved with have really focused on kind of the quality improvement and the health, the positive growth and health of the institution. We've got folks in the room, and I said this to Cheryl before everybody came in, that I am already happy with the number of attendees that we have here, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to participate. Do you guys want to share your reasons for coming, what you're hoping to get out of this?
To have a better understanding what we're supposed to be doing.
Anybody else?
Well, I know that we have work to do, and I know that I am somehow assigned to some group or something other, and so I'm trying to get re-engaged in the idea and understand what's going on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I echo what Scott says. Additionally, I'm just curious. This is my first time being involved at this level, but wondering how the work we did over the summer in terms of anti-racism, how to better serve certain students might impact or inform what we do.
Yeah, thank you. All right, those are all great reasons for being here, and we'll talk about all of that as we go along today. It's not a big group of us, so I have this kind of presentation style, but I'm gonna, pause throughout. It's harder for me to keep an eye on chat and my screen, so if you have something you want to ask about or say, just unmute and ask your question. You don't have to be super formal. Okay, so what I was intending to do is just kind of give a few quick overview things so that we all have a foundational knowledge of what we're focusing on and talking about. And then I wanted to dig into a little bit about what we're going to do over the next coming months. Many of you who are here have either volunteered voluntarily or been recruited in to participate in the ICER writing process. And if you haven't already, you may be recruited soon. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up. And then I appreciate Michael's question because it kind of digs into one of the opportunities that we have in this accreditation cycle that we've never had before to not just talk about the standards in their language and I don't want to say their agenda, but what they state, but really talk about CRC and where our heart is right now and what we need to be working on. And that's through the quality focus essay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. All right. So the foundationist of foundations, we've got to know is who we're accredited by, and that is the ACCJC, which is it's a branch of WASC, Western Association, and all of it lays under the Department of Education. So accreditation is basically a system to ensure the quality of the educational institutions that are out here. And so Department of Education makes guidelines that then the accredited agencies have to match up with, and then that filters down to us. To be accredited, you have to do certain things. You have to meet certain eligibility requirements, certain accreditation standards, and you have to follow the processes within that accreditation agency. The college as a whole is accredited, but then Cheryl was mentioning some of our individual programs have their own accreditation through other agencies. And so, for example, our veterinary technician program has its own accreditation in addition to what we do here for the college. So they have additional guidelines that they abide by to demonstrate the quality of their program and to be able to provide the certificates and degrees that they do. All right, that's all the history. If you want to know more about the ACCJC, I want to just make sure if I flip through, can you see my desktop still? No, just the presentation. All right, I'm going to switch my screen share, so bear with me, today. All right, stop share, and I'll share one more time. Sorry, guys. I'm going to share my whole screen, and then you'll see everything I do. So if you really want to know a lot about ACCJC, they have a lot of great information. Their website, of course, is available to us. And one of the resources that I'm going to spend time showing you today is we've created an accreditation Canvas course. And it's really for anybody at CRC. I took the inspiration from what Lisa Abraham and the Professional Development Committee have done for the PD Canvas course. And I wanted to have a spot where we could all go into, even if we're not on an ISER writing team, so we can go in and see resources and be able to check in on the process or comment or learn more about it. So this is my quick pause, and I'm going to share with you, if I can do this, maybe, meeting controls, mission control. Hold on just a sec. I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. Bear with me. Got beeping in the background. My daughter is going to be late to her PE class. If you haven't already, this is the self-register link to the Canvas course. The way these work, if you haven't done one before, you click on the link. If you're already logged into your single sign-on, it'll bring you right into Canvas, and then you'll just accept the invitation and you can get in and see the course. Hold on. Questions so far?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do you mind if I hold on for just 1 second? Sorry, be right back. Sorry. Our lives right now are a little bit, you know, jumbled. So in the Canvas course, if you really wanted to get to know ACCJC or other accreditation topics right now, then you can, I think this will take me in there. There is a module and it has accreditation basics, and ACCJC has a nice little training that they even provide that you can just pace yourself through at. All right, so that's our big picture background. Let's talk about the review process. So the college goes through a cycle of review. So we are accredited already, but every 7 years we go through a review process. Sorry, just 1 second again. Okay. The accreditation review process that happens every 7 years starts out with what we're working on right now, which is our self-evaluation report. And the self-evaluation report is really where we go through and we look at the accreditation standards and we say, this is how we meet them. The review process just overall has been revised a little bit this accreditation cycle. And so after we write our ICER, it's shared with the accrediting commission, but it goes right to a team. There's a peer review team that's compiled. It includes faculty and administrators from other colleges who are part of ACCJC. They can be California community colleges. They can also be from other areas. There are some private and also some Pacific Island institutions as well. That group, that peer review team, in this, what's going to happen is they're going to get a copy of our ICER and they're going to read through it really carefully, and they're going to document what kinds of questions they have about our institution. And what used to happen is they would then come to our college. They'd come for about a week and they would spend time asking us a bunch of questions. They'd go and meet with different writing teams. They would talk to college leadership. They would hold forums and they would gather a lot of information, and then they would write up a report. This time around, things have changed a little bit. So they're going to, after they read through our self-evaluation, they're going to send us back some questions, and they're going to say, these are some areas that we have questions about. Do you have more evidence, or can you give us more information? And it's going to give us some time, about 6 months, where we'll be able to kind of gather some more information for them and have it prepared. And then when they come and visit our college, the review team will come for a shorter amount of time, and they're really just going to be coming to look at those core inquiry areas. So areas that they said, well, maybe we just don't understand how you're meeting the standards, or maybe you said you wanted to improve on this, and how are things going? And it'll be what they're calling a focused site visit. So it'll be shorter, less intense, less pageantry, more of just really focusing on those questions they have for us. After the review team visits us, they, I'm sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, we're having a crisis with PE class. So after the review team comes and visits our college, then they'll finalize their team report. It will have been drafted before that, and then they add on additional information to it. And then that team report goes with our self-evaluation to the commission, and they review everything, and then they make a recommendation about whether and how our review or accreditation should be either extended, or if they need any further information or action. I'm going to pause here. I've talked a lot. I'm going to help my daughter into her classroom and stop sharing. And if
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you too, Ken.
Yeah, I feel for Emily right now. I don't know how all you parents are doing this. My oldest will be 29 in September, and then my son is 27, so I can't even relate to what you guys are trying to go through right now. My hat is off to you. It's difficult enough without everyone having to share the internet and trying to work and be a parent at the same time. So I hope everything's going well. I'm glad everybody's healthy.
It's just nice to see people as humans, though. You know, I mean, yeah,
Yes.
it's a little intrusive, but yeah, we are people and we're humans and we have families, and you know,
Absolutely.
it's nice to, I don't know, even though we're apart, it seems that we're, you know, getting to know each other a little bit better as people. So
Very true. I was just saying, Emily, that I don't know how all of you are doing it with young children at home, with mine are adults and out of the house for many years. So my hat is off to you trying to do two things at the same time.
thank you. And thank you guys for your patience. My daughter she's in 3rd grade and she's adapted really well to distance learning, but you know, there's always something that comes up, right? So,
Sure.
all right. So I kind of got, oh no, I see that we have an evacuation out of the Fairfield fires. There's a lot going on in our world right now, in our community. And I hope your sister is safe and her family. So that was a lot of information. And what we're looking at right now, and I appreciated Scott saying this at the beginning, that we're all kind of getting our brains back into this. We have right now the task ahead of us of trying to prepare our self-evaluation report. And I'll be honest, I think it feels a little daunting to do that under the current circumstances where we're all trying to just get used to working in such a different environment. But I'm very confident in our team at CRC. What I hope we can come out of this year is taking a little time for some self-reflection. And I think that's what the self-evaluation is, where we can look at our college and our policies and our way of doing business and see, are we continuing to serve students? How have we done it? And what do we want to change? And so I hope that's what we can do with this ICER. So at the beginning, I've been using all the accreditation terminology as we've been going along. And so one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning was there's kind of 2 elements of the language that we talk a lot about. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna share my screen again, and I'm gonna bring up 2 different things for us. So the thing you're gonna hear all year long is standards, 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 standards. And this is the language that ACCJC uses to describe kind of the different elements that they're asking colleges to meet or show how that they accomplish these things. So the standards is actually a document. If you're looking at our Canvas course, the standards are available for you to link to and look at, and they're available in a couple of different areas. There's a section, I've broken out different sections of the standards because we're going to have writing teams focusing on different areas, but then we have the full accreditation standards to look at. the standards is a document, and it includes all of these different statements, and the statements describe different, I think, characteristics of the college, or maybe almost like a competency, like a way of doing business that we should meet. And so you're going to hear that terminology of the standards all the time. The other terminology that is really common is in this, within the, to be able to be accredited, you also have to meet eligibility requirements, and that's kind of an ongoing thing as well. There are 4 main standard sections. The first is mission, academic quality, and institutional effectiveness. The second is student learning programs and support services, and then resources, and then leadership and governance. And so if you look at, if my document ever wanted to load, which it's not going to, so I'm going to show you it in a different place. But the accreditation standards, they're broken down into 4 sections, and within each section, there's a statement that kind of describes what the standard is about. And then there's sections. 1A is on mission, and then it has 4 different elements related to the mission, such as we have a mission, and it describes what our purpose of our institution is, and so forth. So when we talk about standards, we're talking about those 4 sections and then the individual elements within them. For those of you who have been recruited to writing teams, you've been invited to serve on or to lead in one of these standards. And if you haven't yet joined an ISA writing team, I encourage you to do that. The work, there will be work to do, but we're really working this year to try to focus in on what we do here at CRC, and it's less about writing an entire novel about what we do here, but more about kind of highlighting some statements about what we do. All right, so we've got some terminology: ISER, standards, ISER. Anybody remember what that was? I've thrown it around. All right, the ISER is our institutional self-evaluation report, but ISER is a lot easier to say, right? So when we're doing our review, or when we're writing our response, writing our ISER, we are going to be working in groups, reading through the standards, and then coming up with kind of a statement on how we meet those standards, and looking for evidence from our college about how we meet those standards. So that's just kind of the nuts and bolts of what the process of writing the ISER will be. Some other things for those of you who've been at CRC for a while or been at a California community college, this review cycle, the ACCJC, so that's our accrediting agency, has created a template for us to use for writing our ISER. And if you're curious about it, in our Canvas course, it's down at the bottom in our training and resources, and it's just a Word document, and it's this ISER template, and it's essentially a Word document that just says insert text. They're really wanting us to strip away any of the kind of fluff that has gone into past self-evaluation reports. I know in the last one, a lot of people have talked about, they were just trying to throw in as much information as possible so there wouldn't be anything missed. With this ISER that we're going to write, it's not about telling the long history of CRC, it's just about demonstrating that we meet the standard, and giving some examples from the last 6 years, last 5 years since the last review. And so it's not trying to go back to 1970 and, you know, tell the whole almost 50 years worth of history, right, of CRC. Questions so far? All right, so we know our accrediting agency. We know what a standard is. Let's take a look at one. So I'm gonna have me stop talking so much and let's talk about a standard. I went ahead and went into that document that I just showed, that PDF of all the accreditation standards, and I just pulled out one. And so I wanted us to read some of the language of a standard and talk about, like, how would we interpret that, and what are some things that we know about CRC that demonstrate this. So this standard is from Standard 1, which is Mission, Academic Quality, and Institutional Effectiveness. This is Standard 1B1, and it says the institution demonstrates a sustained, substantive, and collegial dialogue about student outcomes, student equity, academic quality, institutional effectiveness, and continuous improvement of student learning and achievement. Whew, mouthful, right? So I would like to hear from you guys when you see that, when you read it, when you hear me spout off the whole thing, what comes to mind?
Well, we have our committee on institutional effectiveness, and so I'm kind of thinking that if we're going to document dialogue, that their agendas or their meeting minutes, other stuff like that might be applicable.
Great.
What jumped out to me was the first three words after demonstrate. That looks like that's what they want to see, is proof of the sustained, substantive, and collegial. And so everything that we look for, I guess, should, I'm just assuming that everything that we provide should go to one of those three that demonstrates those three things.
Thank you, John.
This is Rhonda. One of the things that jumps out to me is looking at student outcomes. And I think in our previous cycle, we really focused on those sort of course and program level outcomes. And when we look at the change that we've made over the last few years, looking at how we've addressed the institutional learning outcomes and worked through that process through our participatory governance committee and with our constituency groups, and that the outcomes really has become more of a focus in conversations in curriculum, in institutional effectiveness, in PGC. So I think we're seeing a much broader dialogue as well.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have evidence of it, but now the student success teams in each CAC are also talking about these things as well.
So I just want to pause really quickly, and I want to hear from more people, but I appreciated everybody that spoke because you're zeroing into different elements of this. One of the things that I first experienced when I started reading some of the standards is I would get a brain cramp, and it was like, okay, this sentence is complex and it's got all these layers, and how do I tease out what they really want me to respond to? And so I appreciated that you each kind of zeroed in on different elements, and I think that's really what we want to have happen in the ISER writing teams, is we have a chance to read the standard, we all think about it, and then give an example of what we see in it. So some things that we have an institutional effectiveness branch committee that kind of we'll have meeting minutes, and we'll have examples of some of the dialogue about outcomes, equity, and academic quality, etc. We have some adjective words about what type of dialogue do we see. Sorry, we got some feedback. we have some adjectives that are describing what type of dialogue do we have at our institution. So it's not just a one-time thing, but it's sustained and substantive and collegial. And I appreciate that Rhonda was talking about the layers of where we're talking about these things. And I think that really gives us good examples of how it's substantive if it's happening in curriculum and in institutional effectiveness, and like Kim said, in student success teams. It's not just isolated to one area. So right here, we've brainstormed some ways that we're meeting this. And now we've got some places where we might look for some examples. So an example might be curriculum meeting minutes and institutional effectiveness minutes to talk about student outcomes in different areas, in different ways. It might be student success team meetings that have meeting notes that talk about how in SBS CAC, they are working on these initiatives to address the student equity needs in that program. So we've got a lot. This is looking at the work we're already doing and just keying into, here's some examples of how we're already doing this work. All right. What are some other things, and does anybody else have something they wanted to add about this?
Emily, Rochelle here.
Yeah.
So when I see this line here, I'd like to think of our story, CRC story, as it aligns with the initiatives that we currently have through the state, throughout the state, like for example, the guided pathways, and how we put ourselves in our story and how we develop ourselves into making sure that we were able to go and be able to fulfill the initiatives that were given to us.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, Rochelle, because a lot of what has occurred over the last 5 years has really been impacted by the initiatives initiatives and legislation, right? Both of those things together have really impacted how we go about doing business. And so I think a really key element of what we're going to be talking about in this ICER is going to be referring to how we've implemented guided pathways and how it has set us up to have some of this collegial dialogue on student achievement and learning that we haven't necessarily had a good space for before, or maybe we have, but it's improving. I think that those initiatives are going to be something that we're talking about over and over again. What else do you folks?
Well, this is Cheryl, and
Yeah.
kind of tagging on with that, the fact that we're having to deal with the discussing our continuous improvement of student learning with all of these additional changes that we've had with the guided pathways and things like that. I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to demonstrate what, as they've said, what effect that has had on learning and achievement and retention and those kinds of things. So that should be a big part of what we're doing, as well as actually showing that the positive, hopefully, impact that our changes are affecting the students.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. So this is why you guys are great. I'm gonna jump out of this screen and go back to the modules really quickly in Canvas. So the standards, there's 4 different sections. There's the mission and academic quality, student learning, resources, and so forth. But in each standard, there are some common things that we need to, as an institution, look at. And one of them is, how are we putting resources towards, or how are we creating programs that support student learning? How are we using data to inform our planning and decision making and assessment and so forth? And so I appreciate that you're thinking about how, as we make these changes, how do we then kind of see what the impact of those changes are. When we write the ICER, I probably should have had this open, but part of the task for each standard is to show how we meet them. But we also have an opportunity for analysis to say, this is maybe areas that we're continuing to grow in, maybe areas that we need to improve on. And we can make improvement plans for sections or for standards that we feel like there's some big areas of growth for CRC still to come. And so that's a spot for us to highlight. Thank you. So I went out of that standard. That just a couple minutes worth of exercise. For those of you who are serving on writing teams, this is something that I hope that you will do together as a group, and something that myself and Kim and Julie as your accreditation tri-chairs will help to facilitate. What we want to do a lot of this fall is to spend some time just reading the standards. So if I'm in standard 1 for mission, I'd go in and I'd read mission number 1, 2, 3, jot some notes, talk about it with my team members, consider some evidence, try to look for some examples, grab a couple meeting minute examples. Maybe we created a document, maybe we created a new plan within our CAC. Any of those documents that we know of, we'll start to gather as evidence. And then the writing part, what we're planning to do is really focus in on just some simple statements of how we're meeting the standards, and not really require the writing teams, the ICER teams, to focus so much on writing long paragraphs or drafts of drafts, because that is not really what we need in this writing process. All right, we've looked at a standard, and I wanted to switch over to one more thing that kind of relates to some of the goals that folks mentioned today. So Michael at the outset mentioned, how can our ICER, how can our, I don't know exactly how you stated it, but how can we let the work of the summer, the really important focus on anti-racism and looking at equity in our programs and services and the outcomes of our students, the health of our students, how can we reflect on that in this process? I think that can be true in any of the ICER writing teams for any of the standards, but one of the elements of this new process is a quality focus essay. And a quality focus essay is not something we've ever done before, but it seems like we'll be doing it in the future. It is a component that will be separate from the standards, although it can stem out of them. And it gives CRC the opportunity to really innovate or to focus on projects and areas that will improve student learning and achievement. The ICER, we are allowed to take about 2 to 3 topics, and we can kind of choose how we want to do. There's a page limit or a word limit on how much time we spend writing. But really what we're supposed to do is identify some initiatives or some areas of focus that we think are important for our institution, that we want to put resources towards. We want to track our progress. We want to see some improvement over the next few years. And it's an area where we'll respond on how we're making progress in our midterm report and then in our next evaluation in 7 years. So if we have something at CRC where we want to make substantive change, such as improving the equity of outcomes of all of our students, but specifically focusing on dismantling racism in our institution, then this might be an area for our quality focus essay. So I wanted to give you guys just an opportunity if you have ideas. We want this to be something that is meaningful to CRC.
I think Michael's idea is a great idea. I think we'll be definitely tracking progress that we make on closing these obligation gaps we have for our students, and what better way to improve our institution in all the standards than focusing on that. So I think it's a great idea.
When we were talking about this a little bit last year, one of the things that when I say we, Robert and Julie and I as accreditation tri-chairs, we kind of commented on that we have a lot of initiatives and a lot of things, elements or programs that are coming out of guided pathways that, you know, we've implemented a lot of change. And so some areas where we really want to put resources and watch them grow, cultivate them. So looking at the student success teams and that.
Yeah, the teaching and learning leads too.
The teaching and learning leads.
Mhm.
Looking at also, if we're looking at student learning and student achievement, are there other things that come to your mind? It's okay. It's not a quiz. So one of the things that I'm hoping that we can accomplish with the Canvas course is to provide a space where people can share ideas. So there's a couple of discussions that are open right now, and there will be more open. And one of them is on the quality focus essay, where I'd like to get folks' ideas of what we think is important for CRC to be focusing on, and putting in this kind of special section of our ISER that we're going to continue to follow up on. And so I'll record some of the idea notes from today, and then hopefully if you think about this, you'll also share your ideas on here as well.
I was going to ask, if this is a new piece for me for accreditation, are there examples of people's quality focus essays? Not that we would copy what they've done, but just to sort of see how they're formatted and what they look like.
Yeah, I will look for examples. That's one thing that I didn't accomplish over the summer, was trying to gather some of that. Okay. But I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So I just want to pause and see if there's just any general questions that folks have about all of this.
I just have a question. Emily, do you think this quality focused essay we can look at, like when we applied for the Hispanic Serving Institution, for example, the grants that we have, and then we have ANAPC as well. Can we can probably look at those as resources for activities that we can talk about on this. I mean, I was just thinking of some sources that we can look at for initiatives, and I think.
So, and I think that both of those are good examples. I think what we want to be able to do is point to steps that we're trying to take, progress that we're trying to take to improve student learning and achievement. And I think both of those grants are supportive of that. And so the quality focus essay, because we're able to take more than one topic, we may focus on more than one area. I don't know if that would make sense. The quality focus essay, although we will bring in examples from what we've been doing, it's not as much an evidence of what we've already accomplished. It may be we've started this and we want to see how far we can go, see improvement. So it may be more about the data that we've already measured, about where we're lacking. This is all new for me too. So I always, when I do anything that is accreditation related, I always have a little bit of imposter syndrome that I think, oh my goodness, how am I? We're all learning about this together because this is our first time around to have this. And so I think Kim's suggestion that we have some good examples to look at would be good. One of the things that has been beneficial for this accreditation review process is ACCJC has gone through a lot of transformation over the last 5 years. There's some new leadership and a lot of changes to the review process. And one of the things they've implemented is that we have a liaison who is one of the vice presidents of ACCJC. And our liaison is a good support for us, so where we can go to for questions. And then she's also support for our review team, so that as they're reading our ICER and visiting our campus, she's part of that process too. So she can kind of help on our behalf, letting them know about CRC. One of the things that has been kind of a culture shift, if you will, about accreditation for the California community colleges is in years past, accreditation was more about looking for deficiencies. And I think now the culture is really focusing on how does our institution interpret and meet these standards, as opposed to measuring against someone else's scale. And so I think that that will be beneficial for us in this process. So I've pretty much gone through my presentation, but I wanted to bring up a few things of how you can be involved. A lot of folks who have taken the time to come to this workshop are already volunteered on ICER writing teams, but we do have some need for faculty, staff, and administrators to participate. We have some leadership needs and also just team members in general. And so if you're interested in participating, please let me know. I might reach out to you anyways, like I've done to everyone else, and twist your arm. If you don't feel like you're up to participating in a writing team, or if you are on a writing team but you have ideas for another area, in the Canvas course, one of the things that I'm trying to add in are some areas for us to have some cross dialogue about each of the standards and the similarities that we're responding to some of the same themes in standard 1 and also in standard 3 or 2. I also have some forms in here where you can give suggestions. I came across this document and oh yeah, it sounds like it talks about the mission, or I was on the mission review and revision team a few years back. Here's some documents I have from that. And you can share some evidence ideas. So I think the more we can use the collective of our experience and our brain power, the easier this process will be.
Didn't realize I was unmuted already. I just wanted to bring up one other facet of this. There also is a district coordinating body that helps the 4 colleges coordinate. As you get more familiarized with the standards, you'll see that some of them really have to do with district level policies and regulations. So some of those things will come straight from board regulations, and then some of the language might be coordinated at that district coordinating body rather than done individually at each of the campuses.
So I've reached the end of my presentation stuff. If you haven't already, the Canvas course link was in the recording or in the chat, and I can also share it with you. If you're interested in being a part of the process, you know, large or small, you have limited time, you have lots of time, which all of us do right now, right? Then please let myself know. Kim has been here, and I appreciate her joining us. She has joined us, our accreditation tri-chairs, as the interim accreditation liaison officer this semester. And so I appreciate her being there.
Thank you.
I appreciate all of you guys for joining today. Thank you.